It's March, and you know what that means? It's time for our annual Women's History Month episode of Fishtrap Fireside. Each year, the United States sets aside this month to honor women's contributions in American history. And we have three superstar Wallowa County writers who represent a generational rainbow of women who do just that. Our featured readers this month are Janie Tippett, Talia Galvin, and Lynn Curry. And what is Fishtrap Fireside? Some of you might not know. It's a monthly reading series for Wallowa County writers to read and share their work. And since 2013, hundreds of folks have come up to the podium and shared their stories with their friends and neighbors. Historically, we meet here at Fishtrap. This is the Fishtrap House in Enterprise. I'm all by myself this year, but with the virtual experience, I miss seeing you all, but the virtual experience has had some benefits. This way, people from all over the place, any place, have been able to watch Fishtrap Fireside online. And we've had people from all over the country and maybe all over the world tune in to see what Wallowa County writers are thinking and writing about. This month's episode of Fishtrap Fireside is sponsored by the Kokanee Inn Bed and Breakfast in Joseph. And it's also thanks to all of you who have been watching. If you want to be a part of Fishtrap, and I hope you do, you can become a fish trapper for as little as $5 a month. You get a lot of cool benefits like discounts to writing workshops, you get stickers, you get a notebook, you get connection with other writers. I hope you take a look at that at fishtrap.org. Okay, let's get to our first reader, Janie Tippett. Just the name resonates. She is a cornerstone of Fishtrap for years. She was a columnist for Agri-Times Northwest for 31 years, is the author of 4 Lines a Day, The Life and Times of an Imnaha Ranch Woman. It's been published in anthologies of Western writers and is a freelance writer. She is a 4th generation rancher, mother of 4, stepmother to 3, grandmother and great-grandmother to many. Janie is also a photographer, outdoor enthusiast, is active in 2 writers groups, and makes, in my opinion, the best sourdough rolls in the world. Janie, good to see you. How's life up on the slope?
Fantastic.
Love to hear it. Hey, would you share a story with us tonight?
A story about, oh, okay.
Would you do a reading for us tonight?
Yeah, this is introduction to what I'm going to read. It's self-explanatory. In 1984, the agricultural newspaper Agri-Times Northwest sent a free copy of its first issue to rural mailboxes. I read and really liked my copy. Thought it was all really positive stuff. That morning, my husband Doug and I trailed our cattle to summer pasture in the hills, then spent the afternoon at a country auction of the estate of a family we had known. When I got home, something moved me to write up what I had seen at the auction, and something else made me send the essay into the publication. In the quickest time a letter could possibly take to arrive, Agri-Times editor Virgil Rupp was on the phone. "We loved your piece and we want to publish it," he said. "We want you to be a columnist." As I recall, I said, "Gee, I keep a journal every day. I can write down about ranch life," to which he replied, "You're in." I went on to write for 31 years about my life in Wallowa County. This is that first essay. The Country Auction by Janie Tippett. The last of the yearlings filed into the hill pasture at Butte Creek. It was the last day of March, and we had trailed 300 yearlings to the hills from our ranch on Upper Prairie Creek, a 2 days drive. We had ridden the long road, nearly 30 miles, gazing, gazing at the fields of buttercups amid the last of winter snowbanks. Now, on this Saturday afternoon, we headed for the valley to attend the auction. We drove into the ranch setting to find the auction already in progress. This spot was situated in the beautiful Wallowa Valley near the small town of Joseph. Cars were parked everywhere. The day was warm and lovely with periods of sunshine. Crowds of people mingled around the 50-year accumulation of this family's life. And it was with pathos, nostalgia, and empathy that I viewed the proceedings of this auction. Widowed and alone, the ranch woman sat in a chair in her rundown yard. The vacant house stood nearby, the yard fence sagging, all the furniture sitting out in the March sunshine. Everything, including a home comfort wood cooking stove of gray enamel. The stove, appearing to have been used until just recently, was in good condition. Widowed and alone, the ranch woman sat in a chair in her rundown yard. The vacant house stood nearby, the yard fence sagging, all the furniture sitting out. Oh, I just read that. Sorry. Some months ago, the woman living alone had gone into Joseph to help a neighbor and friend clean house. She had slipped on the winter's ice and broken a hip. It had mended sufficiently to allow her to walk with the aid of a walker, and she had been brought to the auction by a daughter. But she had made the decision to leave her beloved home and now resided in an apartment out of the area. So here she sat, watching her treasured belongings and personal items, many of which were of antique value, being purchased by all these people to be scattered to the winds of time. I could not but think of the memories and feelings she must be experiencing as each item sold. I walked around looking at the old furniture, then entered a root cellar, many of which were of, I'm sorry, but my glass. I walked around looking at the old furniture, then entered a root cellar. The shelves were still lined with jars of fruit and vegetables. I gazed down at the barn lot, at the many kinds of old farm machinery. Presently, I sat down next to the woman and visited with her. We talked about how this morning Doug and I had driven the cattle to the hills, how at the spot we loaded up our horses for the return trip. I had learned from one of the cowboys that on this same spot lay the homestead of her deceased husband's parents. The same cowboy, an old timer himself, born in these hills, had related to me a little about her life. She and I talked about where she was born, which was just down the canyon from there, and how she was a schoolmarm at the now crumbling Dry Salmon Creek School. She had boarded with the family and ultimately married a son while teaching there. I could picture her in my mind's eye, riding her horse to school. Yes, she replied, I packed water and taught grades 1 through 8 in that one-room school. I didn't have any further opportunity to talk to her because her daughter was helping her up to leave. This Wallowa County woman, her hands calloused and worn from ranch work, the cooking, cleaning, canning, and raising of a family. Her eyes reflected the wisdom of time spent in the Wallowa country, the hard winters and the busy summers and falls. Now the milk cow is gone, along with the butter churn and the cream separator. The baby chick she used to raise each spring no longer cheep, cheep, cheep in the barn. And the worn feeders and waterers are being sold today. The hoes, rakes, and garden tools are lined up along the fence. The garden she so faithfully tended no longer there. The auctioneer was chanting and talking about each item: a copper boiler, a butter churn, an old Griswold waffle iron for a wood stove. Children and dogs ran around and over the furniture. A food concession wagon was doing a land office business feeding the crowds of people. Wallowa County loves a country auction. The warm afternoon became clouded up and a brisk chill wind began to blow. The nearby Wallowa Mountains were wreathed in swirling mist, and a spring snowstorm became evident. All manner of harness, shop tools, milk cans, old wagons, relics of the past were lined up to be sold to the highest bidder. Better step right up and bid now, folks. They don't make these anymore, chanted the auctioneer. People bought the old wagons just to get the wagon wheels. The cold became more intense and the crowd thinned. Finally, the last wagon load loaded with junk sold. The people loaded up their wares and left. The woman had left earlier, aided by her daughter. She had given a long, sad look at a part of her life that would never be again. She climbed into her car and never looked back. I could see that she had tears in her eyes, and I did too. I glanced at the house as a breeze sent a light sifting of snow downward, the pretty day ending in a cold spring storm. March going out like both the proverbial lion and lamb. The close by mountains, a sight the woman must have loved, looked down on the near deserted scene. The lonely house, devoid of its contents, stood forlorn, old, the outbuildings in need of repair. Once well tended and loved, now stood vacant and sad looking. Life is so short. Old age so full of hurt and pain. Memories are what the woman has left, and the satisfaction of having lived in an era which could have been one of the best, time will tell. The gate hanging from broken hinges in the yard banged in the wind. The plastic around the windows to keep out the winter cold fluttered and tore itself in each new gust of wind. The ghost of the past played in the barn. All was still as we drove out of the yard to our own ranch to tend our own chores, build a fire, and find food and warmth in our home. Sunday morning, my husband and I baked sourdough waffles on our wood cook stove. We thought them especially good. They had been made on an old Griswold waffle iron, one that my son had purchased for me yesterday at yesterday's auction. And I'm just going to read a short little one. I took Greg Kleiner's class in 2003 at Summer Fish Trap, and Greg Kleiner, in my estimation, is one of the finest writers. And I listened to Fireside the other day, and I was just bowled over by his it was from a novel, I believe. So the assignment was to take a card and write just on that card and mail it to yourself. But we didn't mail it. We were just going to write this short little piece that fit on a card. So I got the biggest card. I want to get and I'm not going to explain anything. 90-year-old Wilmer Cook left the warmth of his old farmhouse to step out into a January blizzard. He walked slightly hunched in his frayed jacket, smelling of cow, his boots coated with manure, his old stocking cap covered with the grime of time. Wilmer knew the path to the barn well. He'd been over it for so many years he couldn't remember how long. And since his Mary passed on, he just didn't bother about time. Except when it was time to milk the cow. The Jersey watched Wilmer approach, anticipating not only her grain, but the relieving of her full udder. Wilmer struggled with the door, the wind hurling snow in his face. Patiently, the cow waited, knowing Wilmer was reliable, faithful to her needs. A week later, Wilmer sold his cow. Too much for him anymore. Now every other day he drives over to Tucker Down Road to visit his cow, make sure she is okay. Takes her grain, talks to her, and she knows him. Since Mary's death, he's had to make some decisions. What will he give up next? The raspberries? The bees? His music? His gold panning? None of the above. He'll die doing what he loves, not far from where he was born.
Oh, Janie, you're a documentarian of this life. Thank you very much. Have you folks ever thought Gosh, I wish I had more uninterrupted time to write, to tell my story, connections with other writers, or just someone to inspire me. Well, my friends, I've just the preparation for you. Fishtrap provides a lot of different opportunities to do that. We provide writing workshops throughout the year. The upcoming ones on Saturday, March 13 and Saturday, March 20. Our good friend Perrin Kearns is teaching a writing workshop, Writing for Resilience, Finding and Using Joy as a Source. It's 2 Saturdays, and you can sign up for that at fishtrap.org. And then in April, The Land Beneath Your Feet, Writing with Nature, an online workshop with Karen Ovenen. And then in May, we're going to lift up your spirits a little bit, Mining for Life with Laughter with Bob Balmer. I'm super excited about that. And of course, Summer Fishtrap registration is open. It's in July, the 12th through the 18th, and we have so many great workshops coming up in Summer Fishtrap, including workshops in fiction, nonfiction, poetry, lyrical essay, and even in children's literature this year. It seems like it's going to be a really great time. Check that all out at fishtrap.org. All right. Our next reader is Talia Galvin. Talia resides in Enterprise, ogling at the mountains with a cup of cocoa in one hand and a baby in the other arm. Growing up, Talia visited the Wallowa Mountains many summers with her families to camp and explore. And then she returned as a young adult to work for the Forest Service as a ranger in the Eagle Cap Wilderness. Her professional career has taken her all over the place, but she always knew that one day the Wallowas would be her base camp. By trade, Talia captures the delight of humanity, love, untold stories, and local products with her camera. But it's in the rare, quick, quiet times that she puts pen to paper. More often than not, Talia's writing has been a practice of personal reflection. So this Fishtrap Fireside reading is a world premiere of some of her inner workings. Talia, you've added, your family is growing. Tell me a little bit about this.
Well, on Thanksgiving Day, just in time for dinner, we had our second baby, John Owen, at home here. And everybody, the whole midwife team, made it home in time for dessert. So it was great. But yeah, I've got 2 little kiddos and a 4-year-old and a 3-month-old, and they're currently kicked out of the house so I can do this tonight. And this is about the most exciting thing I've done in a while. So thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so happy to have you. I can't wait. Let's hear what you have. Let's hear what you have to share.
Thank you. Well, after a year of much angst and, in my opinion, a lack of grief ritual surrounding so much death related to COVID, and just in my life recently with family, it's left me with even more of a consideration for not knowing just when the rug might be swept from underneath me. That coinciding with a baby book yet to be finished, I felt moved to write something for my daughter. So this is my try at a poem entitled Bushka. If, my daughter, we are ever to part, the mountains will be your mother. Your bottom lip split by the break of dawn echoed sneeze, with the unwelcome taste reminding you your broken heart, much too early, your clavicle chilly from the first snow on the blue gentian. Leer towards the song that truly woke you, wraith in the fog, settled in your very valley. Dew glistens off the herd, a bellowing protection. Do you hear? There are so many. Be reminded that you left the zip open just a smidge to invite the lonesome stars, the elk for tea. The blinding feet In the crick, a sash of dirt below our knobby knees, use your best tooth to tear open your lunch and look up and far at that distant cave, wonder the creature that dwells, why that avalanche is you. As you drag your birdlime feet forward to that birdlime song in your head today and tomorrow and the next, the waft of the wild onion root move you to scoop the sky like my newborn baby with your strawberry shake dreams. Over a first ever found, well-investigated morel, a butter-fried rescue of another failed dinner, to pair with a moody east wind nightcap and delirious giggles. Today was Sunday, and tomorrow will be Sunday again. Stumbling back to your tent after whiskey campfire cocoa, as you dance with your shadow waltzing up the trunks of pines to the sway of your lantern, that feeling of dusk, so blue but also unhued, mystic. Trust only your horse to find the trail when you can't see your hand in front of you. When the tip of his hat makes your heart skip like a washboard drift, let the minerals paint your hair entangled. The frigid waters soothe your rug-burned hips as the fish jumps through the lake moon to swim under your figure, a fallen star. Be your hand in mine when you touch the water. You are made for greatness, my cool granite girl. So that was my first, and for my second, it's just a piece from kind of a short story I'm working on, and I'll just read you a little piece of it. Okay, here we go. I sometimes reminisce about my 22nd year of life, spent in New Zealand studying abroad. When my term at uni was over, I signed up to travel the South Island as a woofer, short for willing workers on organic farms. The program at the time was not very well vetted. Where you'd end up was often a mixed bag. You'd select a farm stay based on a 5-sentence description, a 4-pixel photo, and the farm had to be at least 20% organic in just one practice to be able to host. You'd work about 6 hours a day and trade for room and board, and most importantly, a more authentic travel experience. I selected a farm on an island in an extensive network of sea-drowned valleys called Marlborough Sounds, and it was only accessible once weekly by mailboat. I found myself in a hairy situation where I arrived underwhelmingly experienced, working for a manic woman in her sheep farming family. I'll share with you an excerpt of that story, and youngins, cover your ears because there's a cuss word or two. Counting muscle buoys, the small mailboat hiccuped over the turquoise ripples. I arrive at a weathered dock, eager and naive to get some dirt on my double knees and shear my very first sheep. Excuse me. I am greeted by a brown-haired woman in an oversized flannel with Sally Jesse Raphael glasses, her quiet pot-bellied husband and their son. Also Robert, a 67-year-old retired electrician who's also woofing with them. We roast lamb dinner in a chimenea in an open field while chickens peck at my boots. I retire for the eve in a decrepit shepherd's quarters in a creaky twin bed separate from the main house. I think I'm really gonna like it here. In the morning, I'm asked if I drink coffee. I don't. I say, yeah. The wife begins to interview me on what I'm bringing to the table. Do I repair things? Do I bake? I laugh and say I'm eager to learn. They just finished their last flock for the season, she lacklusterly tells me, and I'm feeling a small hint of she wants to return me. I notice an old piano in the living room. It was her grandmother's, but she doesn't play, and she asks if I play any instruments. I don't really. I play a little piano, I say. Robert has 30 years experience as an electrician, and he's currently repairing our overhead clipper, she beams. I'm asked to start by mowing the lawn and look around to see how else I can be of help. I'm to return at 11 a.m. to continue remaining chores. A few dairy cows chew the cud under the clotheslines, pinned with colorful sheets swaying over hip-level grass. I take my little digital camera and snap a picture when I notice her watching me from the window. "It's beautiful here," I wave and laugh. "Is this where you want me to mow?" I holler. She dries her hands at her kitchen sink and walks away. I fish out a swallowed push mower. I start at the corner where she can best view me begin the requested jungle beautification. At 11, I wander into their overheated farmhouse. I hear only the crackle of the wood stove and take a seat in an old rocking chair. 20 minutes pass. Sweaty, I wander outside to make a contact. Not a soul in sight. I return to sweep some soot around the wood stove and line up their slippers like an orderly fairy tale. While searching for a trash can, I discover a note on the counter in fancy cursive next to a copy of Edmund Scherderey's cookery book, open to an elaborate 2-page recipe. "Talia, please bake this cake." A cake? For the love of all that is holy. I've never made baked a cake in my entire life. There's a photo. That's good. I don't know where to start. I walk to the pantry and pit out. Where is everyone? Lined up like soldiers, I find large, beautiful mason jars full of ingredients. I grab some big bowls. I find a mixer. There are no labels on any of the ingredients. I'm unscrewing lids and huffing foreign powders. I return to the recipe and I see the first ingredient, 375 milliliters of berry sugar. The entire recipe is in milliliters? Shit. I began to pour the most berry-seeming sugar when I'm startled by a roar. "What in the hell is going on here?" The farmer's wife appears in the doorway in a negligee with flannel pants. "I'm working on this cake for you. I got your note. Well, could you bake quietly? You woke me up, young lady." "I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were home and I didn't mean to wake. I'm going back to bed. I'm exhausted." She shuts the door to her bedroom adjacent to the kitchen. I turn the metal spoon as quietly as I can against the silver bowl and turn the pages feather soft. In the back of the book, a conversion chart from milliliters to cups. I start the mixer on the lowest speed. Every place of every item, a holy grail whisper in the kitchen of the crescent moon, Hatay. Guess I'm up. I hear as the door flies open again, some minutes later as I'm ended. "Is the cake in the oven yet?" "Well, no, I'm doing my best, but your ingredients. I see you're using the wrong sugar. Give me." She confiscates my sad mixture. "Here, darling, it seems that baking is not your thing. Why don't you go play the piano and I'll take it from here?" Flour on my forehead, fear for my life, I take the bench. I can feel her gaze on my neck. I start one of the only riffs I know, Clocks by Coldplay. The wife walks over, sinks into a lounger across the living room. A strap falls down her shoulder. "This is good, Talia." She asks if I'll sing when Robert walks in. "Do you mind if I take Talia on a walk to the top of the road? I'll show her the alpacas." On her hike, I tell Robert I'm worried the wife doesn't like me. He coaches me to keep to myself like he does, and we'll make it through the week. He's already made it through 3. To ease my nerves, he compares to 2 woofers he met who in the middle of the night escaped miles through the woods to a highway and hitchhiked after weeks of only sharpening industrial saw blades and eating from the same pot of soup. I ask, "Do you know what we'll do tomorrow?" He points to a thorny, impenetrable thicket and says, "Pull gorse." I sit my bottom on a tiny stone and watch the fluffy white alpacas turn a lighter shade of pink, and I head down the hill for dinner with Robert, my adopted sage and penny loafers. We arrive 20 minutes later for dinner and greeted with a loud scolding. The 16-year-old son winks at me and passes me a mince pie. Squeamish, I ask the wife and husband how they met. "A few months ago on palmersonly.com, the husband replies with a full mouth. Speaking of romance, I tell them in the city I went on a date with an elf and that he told me most everyone in New Zealand acted as an elf or an orc on Lord of the Rings movies. Did you?" "No." Not good for anything. I turn to my meager shanty. I battle a beefy gypsy moth as I change for bed. When I go to close the curtains, I notice the creepy sun loitering by my porch, staring at me. I close them tightly on my impending doom and try to remember the notes of the song I'll play tomorrow. 4:30 a.m. I awake to multiple gunshots. Minutes after they subside, I muster enough courage to peer out. Pitch dark. I imagine they got Robert the Sage and I'm next. In the head, I construe the note I'll leave behind until sunrise, when I tremble over to the farmhouse for my breakfast and homicide. Wild boar hunting. We hunt in the dark. Did we startle you? The husband and son laugh at each other, mouths still full from yesterday's bacon or perhaps human flesh. Boys, Thalia plays piano. Will you play for our meal? The wife insists. Leaving the breakfast cold, I begin my botched version of everything I do it for you. The farmer's wife rocks and is pleased. Who sings this again? The wife grins. Bryan Adams, I say. Ryan Adams? No, Bryan Adams. Oh, I love Ryan Adams. Meanwhile, a previous murmur between the husband and the son at the dinner table relocates into an explosive driveway argument. The son yells, I hate you, fuck knuckles, and peels out in a sports car, while the husband putters a minute behind in his old truck. I'm going to lie down, says the wife. That's it.
Oh gosh, Talia. I'm glad my mic was muted. You got me a few times there. It was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey folks, I want to tell you about another program that Fishtrap does. It's called The Big Read. Every year we pick a great book of literature and try to share it with the entire Wallowa County and Union County community. This year it's In the Heart of the Sea by Nathaniel Philbrick. It's a whale of a tale. And every week Fishtrap is providing different events, book discussions. You can find them all at fishtrap.org. I think you'll really enjoy it. And if you need a copy of the book, we provided copies to the libraries in Wallowa and Union County. And if you can't find one there, the Book Loft in Enterprise is offering discounts on them. And if you need one, you can also get in touch with us and we can get you a copy of the book. I encourage you to enjoy it. All right, our final reader is one of our favorites, Lynn Curry. Lynn moved to Joseph with her husband, Benjamin, in 2001. Of course, Benjamin grew up here. She grew up, though, near the ocean on the New England coast. So Lynn had to adapt to living in this landlocked region by hiking and skiing in the Wallowa Mountains as often as possible. She also spends a lot of time thinking about one of my favorite things, what to eat, which influences much of her writing. Lynn's food essays have appeared in anthologies all over the place, including Food and Booze, A Tin House, and Literary Feast, and Eating Well, among many others. She also works as a freelance journalist focused on small-scale farming, animal welfare, and sustainable agriculture, with articles in The Guardian, HuffPost, Los Angeles Times, and every place else. A former professional cook, Lynn is the author of the grass-fed beef cookbook, Pure Beef. There's a copy in my house, which features several local ranching families. She is working on a follow-up book that explores the range of pasture-raised foods through the use of narrative nonfiction, her all-time favorite writing craft. Ooh, Lynn, follow-up book. Do you have a working title?
Grasslands is the working title, but the subtitle is still pretty convoluted and overly long.
Uh-huh. Well, great. Would you you've been a part of Fishtrap Fireside since the beginning, and I'm excited to hear what you have to share with us tonight. Go for
Well,
it.
thanks, Mike. It was so fun to hear Janie and Talia read in advance. I like going last. I'm going to read a short travel essay, so no food. in this one. The sun shines brightly in November in the arroyos of the Copper Canyon, Mexico's Grand Canyon. Through pine trees and along fading burro trails, we've humped our backpacks overstuffed with books and journals, polypropylene and sleeping bags. The weight of a lifetime of possessions for every Mexican we've met is on our backs for a 9-month trip. We've heard about bandidos who are said to hide out in this natural labyrinth of rocks leading to cliff and unmarked trails that trickle off in every direction. The forest feels inhabited by all those who have passed through here before us, or ghosts. This is no wilderness. Or perhaps I'm haunted by the crumpled carriages of cars on every curve of the Copper Canyon Railway that brought us from the Chihuahuan coast to Creel at 8,000 feet. I stood between the rail cars in the chilling mountain air, experiencing a vertigo both thrilling and horrifying as I gazed down at the victims' intractable graves. The presence and shadows of inhabitants are everywhere, though we encounter no one. Just a stray goat we spy through the thin trunks of the pines that confuse our route finding. We are aiming for the waterfalls, the Cascadas de Custarade, with more blind luck than navigational know-how. It feels like a fairy tale when we suddenly escape the woods into an opening, an oasis of grasses and towering clusters of rock formations with a stream sparkling through it. Slumping my pack onto a broad, flat rock, I sip the crisp, piney air, then stretch out across the green, black, and white lichen to sunbathe. Benjamin slugs water and starts to ask me a question when 2 children soundlessly appear, like apparitions. The boy wears a t-shirt and long brown shorts, the girl a t-shirt and long brown skirt, all a solid week from a good washing. Their cocoa-colored faces are smiling. How long have they been watching us? And from where? Hola, I say to them. Hola, they repeat together. This is the beginning and end of our conversation. The Tarahumara are the residents of the train we've invaded from on high. The tribe has become world famous for their running endurance and primitive lifestyle. I scan the area for signs of a cave. Are their parents watching from somewhere across this expanse? The boy grasps a stick and hoop, and he dashes off toward the stream, expertly controlling the hoop with taps of his stick, sure-footed and showing off a bit. The girl stares at us, and we stare back until I remember I have something she'd like in my blue backpack. Before closing the door to our apartment in Seattle, I tucked packs of pencils and balloons, tiny spiral notebooks for the children I expected to meet, including 1 bottle of bubbles. Zipping, unzipping, and pawing through my gear and clothes, I locate the pink plastic bottle. I open it, dip in the stick, and blow a stream of big bubbles that lift on a wisp of breeze, glisten in the sunlight, and pop just before they land. The girl and the boy know just what to do, as every child on this earth must understand when there are bubbles, the colors of rainbows floating across the sky like clouds just above your head. You must run and chase them down. The girl and the boy jump and dash and laugh, turn to me expectantly with wide open eyes in between each of my breaths. I blow as expertly as I can to feed their delight and mine. After, we play tag. I sprint as hard as I can as they dart and spring like young deer through the grasses. Finally, I retire to the rock and take photos of them while they take turns blowing bubbles. I turn my lens to the monoliths that surround us, examine their crevices. I'm scanning for clues to where they might live. How remarkable that here within these canyon walls and arroyos that cascade with floodwaters in spring, they live and eat and learn and grow. How they see this scene before me with a different set of eyes, read the snaking paths through these woods, and that all of it is as familiar as the rooms in my own house. I believe in the comfort of rocks, not only for the heat they hold with their enduring form and shape, their immutableness. In the summers of my childhood, I inhabited an entire townhouse in the Boulder Jetty on the west end of our beach on Cape Cod. There were furnished rooms, some that pooled water at high tide for the kitchen and bath, and others with places to rest my head. When I walk that jetty, I still recognize each piece of furniture the waves and sand and years have not eroded, and I feel a homesickness. Once the sun drops below the canyon rim and the shadows cool our play space, the boy and girl disappear as quickly as they came into our awareness. Benjamin and I make our camp before getting lost the next day in hitchhiking in a cattle truck to find our way out of the canyon's depths and mysteries. Months later, in the bustle of a bus station, after an all-night ride and overladen with all our gear, my camera is stolen in Oaxaca City. My first thought and most enduring regret is how I lost forever the boy and girl who welcomed us for a moment into their timeless home. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Lynn. I really appreciate it. I just want to say thank you to all our readers this month. Janie Tippett, Talia Galvin, Lynn Curry. This is a great way to celebrate Women's History Month. My name is Mike Midlow. I'm the program director at Fishtrap, and get in touch anytime you need to. We're at fishtrap.org. I also want to send thanks again to the Kokanee Inn and Joseph for sponsoring this month's Fireside, and for all of you for being a part of this. Next month, we wrap up season 8 of Fireside, and hopefully it'll be the last time I'll be in this house all by myself without you. April's featured readers are Pam Royce, Dustin Lyons, and Adele Schott. Should be a great one.
Adele?
Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next month.